Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where the walls breathe, where marble sweats, and where civilization itself decided that being slightly damp was the height of sophistication. You're in Rome, but not the Rome of swords or legions or Caesar's bad haircuts. No, tonight we're walking into the Rome of water and heat, of quiet, echoing halls filled with mist so thick it could probably qualify as soup. You can almost hear the sigh of the empire itself as bathers slip into the pools. It's luxury, hygiene, and politics all stewing together. And fair warning, you probably wouldn't survive the smell. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's strangely soothing knowing how far the steam of this story travels. Tiny flickers of light and warmth scattered across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the threshold of the Thermae of Caracalla, one of Rome's most magnificent bathhouses. It's the 3rd century CE, and this place is as much an engine of society as the Senate itself. The building towers above you, massive arches of red brick and travertine stretching skyward, mosaics shimmering under oil lamps. The faint rumble beneath your feet isn't thunder. It's the heartbeat of the hypocaust, the underfloor furnace system that keeps the marble floors deliciously warm. You push through a doorway carved with dolphins and vines, and warm air greets you like an embrace. It's humid, fragrant with oil and smoke. Somewhere nearby, a fountain splashes lazily. People move like slow shadows through the mist, some chatting, some dozing, one or two pretending not to stare at you, the stranger in their midst. The Romans loved a spectacle, and the baths were no exception. They weren't just places to wash. They were gyms, libraries, art galleries, even temples of gossip. Senators discussed law while sitting half submerged in hot pools. Poets composed odes while oil dripped down their shoulders. Merchants sealed deals with wet handshakes. It's civilization at its slipperiest. You walk through the apodicarium, the changing room. The air is cooler here, and the marble benches gleam. Attendants guard wooden lockers, though guard might be a generous word. Theft was a common hazard. Some bathers even hired slaves called kepsari to watch over their sandals and robes, mostly by glaring suspiciously at everyone else's slaves. There's a low hum of conversation around you. The latest imperial gossip, complaints about bread prices, whispered jokes about senators who spent more time here than in the forum. Someone drops a bronze mirror, and the clang echoes. You pass a wall painting of Venus rising from the sea, her smile knowing, her gaze level, as if she's seen it all before. Beyond this chamber lies the tepidarium, the warm room. Steam curls up through vents in the floor, caressing your ankles. The ceiling above arches high and domed, patterned with painted stars. You feel the temperature shift, a gradual embrace of warmth that makes your muscles sigh. This isn't accidental architecture. The Romans mastered heat flow with mathematical precision. Beneath the floors, a maze of hollow tiles channels smoke and hot air from furnaces stoked by slaves. The walls themselves are double-layered, allowing warmth to circulate evenly. It's radiant heat, a technology so advanced it wouldn't be matched until central heating reappeared in 19th century Europe. Historians still argue whether the design came from a single genius or a slow evolution of Greek and local techniques. Either way, it's brilliant and dangerously comfortable. You realize standing here that Rome's real genius might not have been conquest, but temperature control. The warm air makes you sleepy. Around you, people recline on marble benches, eyes closed. Their skin gleams with a thin sheen of oil. A young man rubs his arms with a curved bronze scraper, the strigil, removing sweat and dirt. The sound it makes is oddly soothing, a rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape. The residue is collected, wiped away and replaced with fresh oil. It's both cleansing and slightly weirdly intimate, part spa, part exfoliating ritual. You wander into the caldarium, the hot room. Instantly, your skin tingles. The air is dense, heavy with moisture. The pool here steams gently, its surface quivering with heat. Light from small, high windows strikes the vapor, turning it golden. This is where the Romans came to sweat out their sins, or at least their hangovers. Somewhere deep below, slaves feed the furnaces with wood. The fire roars through brick ducts, its heat licking the belly of the pool. The Romans had discovered that by mixing heat, humidity, and marble, they could create the perfect human terrarium. You sit on the edge of the pool, and for a moment, everything blurs. The sound, the movement, even your sense of time. A balding man next to you mutters about the emperor's tax reforms. Another brags about a new villa near Ostia. And someone across the room tells a story about a gladiator who fainted mid-bath because he refused to admit the water was too hot. Rome, it seems, takes pride in its stubbornness. There's a faint herbal scent in the air, maybe mint or pine. The attendants often tossed aromatic leaves into the braziers to mask the smell of so many bodies sharing space. Occasionally, perfumed oils were poured into the water itself. Olive oil was the base for nearly everything: soap substitute, skin treatment, deodorant, and occasional salad dressing. You try not to think about the overlap. And yet, for all its indulgence, the baths were deeply Roman, disciplined, organized, and open to everyone. Well, almost. Entrance fees were tiny, often paid by the wealthy as acts of public generosity. Emperors built massive complexes like this to earn popularity. They called them thermae, a word that meant warmth, but also something closer to spirit. You notice something odd. As people lounge and gossip, there's a kind of rhythm, an unspoken etiquette. You move from cold to warm, warm to hot, then back to cold again. It's not random, it's ritual. Some historians say this helped circulation and boosted health. Others argue it was just about showing endurance, a test of how long you could endure extremes without flinching. A group of teenagers splash noisily into the frigidarium, the cold pool. Their laughter echoes like glass bells. You hear someone scold them in Latin that probably translates to, "You'll catch your death." Humans apparently have been saying that for 2,000 years. As you move through each chamber, you realize how the baths are like Rome itself. Order hidden inside chaos. Every arch, every vent, every tile has a purpose. Even the sound design matters. Domes amplify voices, creating a low murmur that makes the air feel alive. It's ASMR before microphones, engineered serenity powered by geometry. You sit by a fountain where water pours from a carved lion's mouth. Its steady rhythm feels eternal. You imagine the engineers who calculated the flow rate centuries ago, never knowing their design would outlast empires. Water as mathematics, comfort as engineering. But Rome's obsession with bathing wasn't purely practical. It was identity. To be Roman was to be clean, or at least to appear so. Barbarian tribes were mocked as dirty. Even conquered people were encouraged to adopt bathing as a mark of civilization. Cleanliness became propaganda. A citizen soaked not just his body, but his loyalty. Still, not everyone approved. Some moralists called the baths a distraction, claiming that too much leisure made Rome soft. Seneca once complained that he couldn't think properly over the constant noise of the men who exercise, the ones who splash, the ones who sing tunelessly. You suspect Seneca wasn't much fun at parties. You glance back toward the entrance. The mist thickens, the voices fade. For a moment, you could believe time itself has dissolved. You're surrounded by strangers, yet somehow everyone moves in harmony. A civilization humming in steam. The architecture glows faintly in the golden light, every surface slick with condensation. You close your eyes. Beneath your feet, the heat of the hypocaust rises, steady, relentless. The Romans believed they had mastered fire itself, tamed it into luxury, and maybe they had. When you open your eyes again, the marble world seems to shimmer. Somewhere in the haze, laughter echoes, a sound that could be 2,000 years old. You take a slow breath, the scent of oil and vapor filling your lungs. The science of comfort, you realize, isn't about machinery. It's about rhythm, ritual, and the quiet illusion that warmth can last forever. And tonight, in this living cathedral of steam, that illusion feels almost real.
The air shifts as you move deeper into the complex. The warmth of the caldarium gives way to something earthier, the faint crackle of fire and the whisper of mechanics. Beneath your feet, the marble trembles slightly, as though the building itself is breathing. You follow the vibration, tracing it through corridors where the walls grow less polished, the air heavier. The luxury fades, replaced by the quiet genius of engineering. You're descending toward the engines beneath the floor, the beating heart of Roman comfort. The hypocaust, that perfect balance of fire and air, hums invisibly below. You crouch near a vent, pressing your hand to the floor. It's hot, but not painfully so, a steady warmth that feels calculated, deliberate. That's because it was. Roman architects didn't just design buildings, they designed experiences. Somewhere in this labyrinth, a man named Gaius Sergius Orata is probably smiling smugly. He's credited by later writers with inventing the hypocaust system around the 1st century BCE, though historians still argue whether he truly did or just marketed it better than his rivals. He was, by all accounts, both an engineer and a showman, a man who realized you could sell comfort as a form of prestige. Imagine it. Pipes beneath the floor, tiny hollow bricks stacked in perfect rows, air heated in furnaces by roaring fires. The warmth seeps upward, licking the stone, creating radiant heat long before thermostats or radiators existed. It's simple, elegant, and absurdly effective. Even modern architects still study it. You follow the sound of the fire down a narrow service corridor. The marble gives way to brick, then to rough stone. The smell of soot thickens. Here, the glamour of Rome burns away, and you meet the people who actually make it all work. The furnace room is a long chamber lined with arched mouths of brick ovens. Prefornia, they were called. Flames dance inside, fed constantly with wood and charcoal. The heat hits you instantly, your breath catches. Slaves, often captured foreigners or debtors, work here in the dim red glow, stripped to tunics soaked with sweat. Their job is endless: keep the fires alive, hour after hour, so the upper floors can bask in warmth. You watch one man shovel ash aside, another hauling a basket of fuel. The air is suffocating. The noise of the flames drowns out thought. And yet, above them, noble citizens sip wine in marble pools, debating poetry and virtue. You can almost hear the irony sizzling in the smoke. One worker looks up, his face streaked with soot, and you catch his eyes for a second, just long enough to understand that history rarely remembers the ones who make comfort possible. Rome's miracles are always powered by someone else's exhaustion. But then the engineer in you stirs. You look around, tracing the design. Each furnace is aligned precisely with flues, vertical shafts carrying heat and smoke upward. The walls are thick, yet porous enough to conduct warmth. Even the tiles are coated in a thin layer of clay to radiate heat evenly. The Romans, without knowing modern physics, built a practical application of thermodynamics. It's genius born of necessity. Public baths were enormous, some covering several acres, and the amount of fuel needed was staggering. The baths of Carcalla alone are estimated to have consumed 10 tons of wood a day. A forest sacrificed daily to keep Rome's elite comfortably moist. Still, the Romans justified it as progress. To them, the hypocaust wasn't waste, it was mastery, the ability to bend nature to comfort. You trace your fingers over a blackened wall, the soot warm even now. Someone centuries ago touched this same spot, perhaps muttering a prayer to Vulcan, god of fire, to keep the ducts clear and the flames steady. As you wander, you find an inscription scratched into the brick: Calor est vita. Heat is life. It's not philosophy, it's literal truth. In a world where winters could be brutal and medicine primitive, warmth meant survival. And the baths weren't just for luxury, they were public health infrastructure. Upstairs, the water still flows. You hear its echo through the flues, a gurgling heartbeat above. The aqueducts feed it, kilometers of stone channels delivering liquid life with mathematical precision. The combination of water and fire, the control of both, is Rome's quiet miracle. You lean against the wall, half dizzy from the heat. There's a strange serenity down here. The fires crackle, the ducts hum, the stone breathes. It's not just technology, it's rhythm, a living organism powered by flame and steam. And yet the system is fragile. A clogged vent, a cracked brick, a lazy worker. Any failure could suffocate the upper rooms or flood the chambers with smoke. The Romans knew this, so they designed redundancies, multiple furnaces, parallel ducts, even small inspection holes called tubuli for checking airflow. You realize you're standing in the ancient equivalent of an HVAC system that could put some modern ones to shame. You wipe sweat from your brow and glance back toward the stairway leading up. The light from above glows faintly gold, refracted by steam. Somewhere up there, bathers murmur in contentment, blissfully unaware of the roaring machinery beneath their feet. It's the paradox of comfort. You only notice it when it stops working. One worker laughs suddenly, tossing a piece of wood into the furnace. It flares bright. He hums, a tuneless melody, maybe a prayer, maybe just defiance. His voice echoes through the ducts, and for a second it sounds like the building itself is singing. You make your way upward again, following the slope of heat. The transition is gradual. The acrid tang of smoke fades, replaced by the sweet scent of myrrh and oil. You pass through a narrow corridor where condensation drips from the ceiling, falling in slow rhythm. It's like walking through a vein, warm, alive, quietly pulsing. Back in the upper chambers, the warmth feels different now. Before, it was comfort. Now, it's understanding. You can almost picture the invisible network under the marble, the hot air whispering through its channels. It's as if you've learned the bathhouse's secret language. You sit near one of the walls and listen. The sound is subtle, a faint hiss, a deep, steady exhale. The hypocaust breathes like a sleeping giant, gentle but unstoppable. It's easy to forget that all this started with simple fire and brick. Historians still debate whether the system originated from practical necessity or philosophical idealism. Was the Roman obsession with warmth a reaction to colder climates in northern provinces? Or was it metaphysical, a belief that heat itself purified body and spirit? Either way, you can feel both logic and ritual glowing beneath the surface. A senator passes nearby, draped in a towel the size of a sail. He nods to you as if to say, "Marvelous, isn't it?" You smile faintly, not sure whether he's admiring the engineering or his own reflection. In Rome, the two are often the same thing. You glance toward a column carved with reliefs of nymphs pouring water from amphoras. The symbolism is not accidental. Heat and water, male and female, fire and flow, dualities in harmony. Rome loved metaphors almost as much as it loved plumbing. As you lean back against the warm stone, you think of the countless fires burning throughout the empire at this very moment, keeping hundreds of baths alive. It's a synchronized symphony of heat, a civilization fueled by forests and ambition. And somewhere, perhaps in a distant villa, Orata or another inventor sketches plans for an improvement, dreaming of a way to make heat rise faster, air circulate smoother, walls glow warmer. The quest for comfort never ends, it only evolves. You close your eyes. The hiss of the hypocaust lulls you like a heartbeat. The flames below flicker unseen, ancient and tireless. You can almost hear them whispering through the centuries. Warmth is control, control is peace, and peace, however brief, is worth the fire.
You emerge from the furnace corridors and step once more into the soft radiance of the upper chambers. The temperature shifts again, less oppressive now, more inviting. The air feels alive, shimmering slightly in the afternoon light filtering through small clerestory windows. You're entering the human side of the equation, not fire and architecture, but flesh and routine. All around you, Rome is bathing. The rhythm is almost ritualistic, though nobody would call it that. You pass a group of men chatting idly as they sit along the tepidarium benches, their skin glowing faintly from heat. They gesture animatedly with oily hands, trading gossip, insults, and the occasional philosophical musing, as if the warmth loosens not just muscles, but tongues. You could almost call it the Roman version of social media. Except here, everyone's half-naked, slippery, and entirely unfiltered. Every bath begins the same way. A greeting, a nod, a silent acknowledgement that you are entering a shared organism. First, you strip. Modesty is optional, but practicality wins. Then you coat yourself with olive oil. Not soap, because that's not a thing yet, at least not in the bubbly sense. Oil loosens dirt, opens pores, and gleams beautifully under the lamplight. You rub it in, feeling both luxurious and slightly ridiculous, like a marinated artichoke. Then comes the strigil, a curved bronze scraper, elegantly cruel. You take it in your hand and drag it slowly along your arm, watching the mixture of oil, sweat, and dust peel away. It's oddly satisfying. Around you, others do the same, some with the precision of surgeons, others with the zeal of men trying to erase entire weeks of bad decisions. Historians still argue whether this ritual was more about hygiene or identity. Did Romans truly believe it made them clean, or did it simply make them feel civilized, separate from the barbarians beyond their borders who bathed in rivers or not at all? The debate lingers, like the scent of olive oil on your skin. After scraping comes immersion. You slide into the caldarium, the hot room, its air dense with steam and conversation. The heat wraps you like a soft, invisible cloak. Marble pillars glisten with condensation. The surface of the water shivers with golden reflections from the lamplights. Someone cracks a joke about the emperor's new aqueduct, and laughter ripples through the vapor. You sink deeper. The warmth seeps into your bones, into thoughts, into the spaces between them. Around you, strangers chat as if they've known each other for years. The baths dissolve social boundaries almost as efficiently as they dissolve tension. Senators soak beside soldiers, poets beside merchants, freedmen beside the wealthy. Here, everyone sweats equally. You can't help but think how strange that is. For an empire built on hierarchy, Rome's public baths are curiously democratic. Maybe that's the secret power of heat. It humbles without humiliation. A man beside you mentions a rumor. Apparently, Emperor Hadrian plans to install cold water plunges in more complexes across the empire. Another snorts, claiming that's madness. No one wants to freeze after sweating. You suppress a smile, knowing that centuries later, science will prove Hadrian right. Contrast therapy, alternating hot and cold immersion, actually improves circulation and immunity. But for now, it's just gossip, floating like mist. You rise and move to the frigidarium. The shift is shocking. Cold water bites your skin, sharp and clean. It wakes you instantly, draws the breath from your lungs. Somewhere, someone gasps. Another yells, "By Jupiter, I'm reborn!" You can't help laughing. It's involuntary, pure reflex, the kind of laugh that bubbles up only when the body's surprised into honesty. From there, you wander toward the palestra, the open courtyard adjoining most large bathhouses. It's part gym, part social club. Men wrestle, throw discus and run laps, muscles glistening under the sun. A group debates military tactics between stretches. Another bets on who can lift a stone weight. You watch, slightly amused, as one man clearly cheats, pretending his weight is heavier than it is. Some things never change. The connection between exercise and bathing isn't accidental. It's biological genius. Work up a sweat, then open your pores to steam, scrape off grime, plunge into cold water, repeat. It's a holistic wellness circuit centuries ahead of its time. The Romans didn't have spa packages. They just had daily discipline dressed as pleasure. You pause by a fountain, its water sparkling as it splashes into a marble basin carved with dolphins. A child tosses in a coin and whispers something, maybe a wish, maybe just mimicry. For a moment, the noise of chatter, scraping, and splashing fades. The fountain's rhythm is hypnotic, and you realize the baths themselves are a kind of symphony. The hiss of steam, the slap of water, the murmur of voices, all tuned to comfort. Someone passes carrying a tray of honey cakes. Yes, snacks. The Romans didn't believe in fasting while relaxing. You take one, bite gently, and it melts, sweet and fragrant. The combination of sugar, heat, and human contentment feels absurdly decadent. Above, painted ceilings depict sea gods and nymphs swimming through pale blue skies. The frescoes are slightly faded, but the illusion still works. You almost feel underwater, suspended between luxury and mythology. The colors glow softly in lamplight, echoing the shimmer of the real water below. You overhear a physician talking about how steam can heal the lungs, how the warmth opens the chest and eases coughs. He gestures dramatically, quoting Galen, the empire's medical superstar. You can't help thinking he's onto something. Modern science agrees. Heat therapy improves blood flow and relaxes muscles. The Romans, without microscopes or lab coats, simply felt their way into the truth. You recline on a stone bench, watching vapor curl through the air. It dances lazily around the columns, vanishing into nothing. You realize that what's happening here isn't just cleansing or leisure, it's transformation. Every layer of grime, tension, and thought is slowly melting off. And perhaps that's what the Romans really craved, not cleanliness, but clarity. As the light fades, the baths grow quieter. Some linger, half asleep in the lukewarm pools. Others shuffle off to the dressing rooms, wrapping themselves in linen, hair still damp. The smell of olive oil and smoke clings to the air. You stand once more, droplets sliding down your skin, and walk toward the exit corridor. The stone underfoot is warm, still pulsing faintly with the heartbeat of the hypocaust below. You glance back and catch the reflection of the lamps in the water. Hundreds of tiny suns burning patiently in their marble sky. The baths are closing, but their rhythm lingers inside you. Your muscles hum softly, your skin tingles, your mind drifts. Tomorrow, everyone will return, perform the same ritual, share the same warmth. The same laughter will echo through the mist. The same debates will rekindle. Nothing will change. And somehow, that's exactly the point. Because the Romans understood something quietly profound. Repetition can be sacred. When you polish the same marble, heat the same air, scrape the same skin, you begin to notice the subtle differences, the micro changes that make each day its own ceremony. You step outside into the cooler twilight. Behind you, the bathhouse sighs, a giant exhale of steam rising to meet the evening sky. The sound mingles with the fading laughter of bathers, with the hum of city life, with the heartbeat of a civilization that found holiness in routine. And somewhere far beneath your feet, the furnaces still roar, unseen but tireless, keeping tomorrow's warmth alive. By the time you wander back through the tepidarium corridors the next morning, the scent hits you first. Not the sharp tang of sweat or the faint metallic whisper of bronze strigils, but aroma. Rich, herbal, floral, musky. The Romans take their olfactory game seriously, and this is the part of the experience that feels half science, half sorcery. You can almost taste it. Crushed bay leaves and sweet myrrh wafting from a jar, resinous pine drifting from a brazier, lavender, rosemary, and the faint echo of something citrusy like bergamot's distant cousin. This isn't just hygiene. It's chemistry with ambitions. Hey, somewhere between oil and incense, the Romans learned that cleanliness wasn't enough. You had to smell impressive while being clean. Attendants glide past with trays of alabaster bottles. Some hold olive oil infused with herbs. Others contain rosewater or powdered iris root. There's even one that smells suspiciously like cinnamon, imported across deserts and oceans at ridiculous expense. The entire space is a sensory experiment. If Rome can conquer the world, surely it can conquer body odor. You move closer to a marble counter where an attendant mixes oils like a bartender. He drizzles a thread of amber-colored liquid into a clay bowl and stirs with a glass rod. When he catches you watching, he grins, dabs a bit on your wrist, and says something about balance in Latin. Balance between warmth and coolness, moisture and dryness. Galen again, always Galen. The physician believed each person carried a mixture of humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, and every scent, every oil, every temperature shift was meant to restore equilibrium. It's funny, you think, how superstition often grows from careful observation, because modern dermatology would tell you that olive oil genuinely moisturizes, and rosemary can reduce inflammation. So maybe Galen wasn't wrong. He just needed better branding. You settle onto a heated bench, and a servant begins to massage your shoulders with slow, practiced movements. His hands smell faintly of chamomile. The pressure is firm, but unhurried, as though he's not merely kneading muscle, but sculpting fatigue out of you. The heat seeps deep, the oil slicks the skin, and your thoughts blur. Steam curls from a copper basin nearby, fragrant with mint and thyme. A woman across the room inhales deeply from it. She claims it clears the sinuses. You recognize it immediately. Ancient aromatherapy. The Romans are accidentally inventing the spa industry, one eucalyptus leaf at a time. Historians still argue whether all this perfuming and oiling was practical or pure vanity. Was it medicine, religion, or just a flex? The answer, as usual, is yes, because Romans didn't separate the spiritual from the sensory. They believed beauty, health, and sanctity flowed through the same pores. A wealthy matron reclines beside you, her hair pinned with gold, her skin gleaming. She chats about a new perfume rumored to come from Arabia, distilled from flowers that bloom only once a year. You smile politely, though you can't help imagining the sheer logistics of shipping such a thing across empires just to smell slightly fancier than your neighbor. Still, it's hard to not admire the science hidden behind the glamour. They understand distillation, heating a mixture to extract vapor, then cooling it to capture essence. Primitive, yes, but unmistakably chemical. Roman perfumers boil petals in oil, collect condensed steam, and filter it through linen cloth, a small-scale experiment in thermodynamics long before the word existed. You think about it as another attendant approaches with a bowl of crushed salts and honey. He gestures for your hands, rubs the mixture gently into your palms. It exfoliates, polishes, glows. The combination is oddly familiar. You realize modern skincare companies still sell almost exactly this. The packaging just costs more. A man nearby laughs as his friend complains about the price of imported frankincense. Better than smelling like the Subora, he jokes, referring to the poorer district of Rome where the air is more sewage than scent. You chuckle softly. Even in antiquity, there's a class divide in cleanliness. Then there's the matter of superstition. You overhear a whispered conversation about perfumes that protect against the evil eye. Certain oils, they say, can deflect jealousy or disease. One old woman swears by spikenard. Another insists rose oil attracts love and wards off misfortune. You're not sure which one's more popular, but the way they speak, you can almost believe scent has power beyond molecules. A physician passes, frowning slightly at their talk, then mutters about unmeasured vapors and temperament of the air. He doesn't sound like he disagrees, just like he wishes he had better data. The longer you linger, the more you realize how advanced these rituals really are. The balance of heat, moisture, and aroma affects mood and circulation. The massage stimulates lymph flow. Even the deliberate breathing, slow, deep, rhythmic, is meditative. It's accidental mindfulness, cloaked in luxury. You remember how earlier someone mentioned the Roman baths were like the empire's nervous system, hundreds of them pulsing across the land, connected by aqueducts, powered by fire, synchronized by habit. Now you see, they're also the empire's laboratory. Every inhale, every drop of oil, a data point in humanity's first experiment with wellness. A young apprentice enters, carrying bundles of dried herbs. He tosses a handful into a steaming basin. Lavender, sage, maybe mint. The vapor rises in tendrils that glow golden in the lamplight. It smells both clean and ancient, like the memory of a forest you've never walked through. You can almost imagine how the heat and oils might have felt to a Roman soldier just returned from a campaign in the north, bones cold from months of rain. To him, this isn't luxury, it's resurrection. And perhaps that's why the baths endure, not as indulgence, but as rebirth. Each oil, each scrape, each inhale resets the body to something closer to whole. Somewhere behind you, a slave drops a bottle. The sharp scent of spilled myrrh bursts into the air, sweet, smoky, almost sacred. For a moment, the noise and chatter stop. Everyone turns, breathes in, and lets out a collective sigh. It's strange how scent commands silence, how a single note of resin can still a room more effectively than any priest. You think of temples now, how they burn incense not just for the gods, but for the atmosphere. Smoke rising, scent thickening the space between mortal and divine. Maybe in its own way, this bathhouse is a temple, and the steam? The incense of the living. You close your eyes, letting the warmth melt into you. The rhythm of scraping, splashing, and murmuring fades. You drift somewhere between wakefulness and drowsiness, where scent and heat and sound blend into one continuous texture. When you open your eyes again, the light lamps have dimmed, the attendants move slower, voices lower. Someone hums a tune, something simple, rhythmic, ancient. You feel the pulse of your heartbeat syncing with it, and you realize maybe the quiet science of the Roman baths wasn't about medicine at all. Maybe it was about tuning human beings back into harmony, body, mind, and environment. Steam, oil, rhythm, fragrance. All instruments in a wellness symphony Rome didn't know it was composing. You rise, body slick with warmth and scent, and head toward the next chamber. The air grows thicker again, fog rolling low like clouds caught indoors. The baths breathe, you think. They exhale through every corridor, whispering that strange, humid wisdom. Cleanliness is temporary, but balance, that's divine.
You wander deeper into the mist now, into the heart of the Roman dream, where the air itself seems to hum. The corridor bends, narrowing into a vault of heat and shadow. A faint, rhythmic dripping echoes off the marble. It sounds almost like a pulse. You step through another archway, and there it is, the sudatorium, the steam chamber. It's different from the caldarium. The light is dimmer, the temperature higher, the silence heavier. Here, every breath feels deliberate. You sit on a low bench, the stone hot but not unbearable, and let the vapor wrap you like a warm fog. For a moment, you do nothing. You simply breathe. You inhale the damp air, thick with the faint scent of eucalyptus and salt, and exhale the residue of yesterday's world, the dust, the chatter, the deadlines that didn't yet exist. This room, built nearly 2 millennia ago, is doing something you'd recognize instantly today. It's steam therapy. Primitive, improvised, accidental perhaps, but undeniably real. You can almost see how it began, a Roman engineer experimenting with the hypocaust's heat, wondering what would happen if you trapped that energy in a sealed room. The result? A space that opens pores, soothes lungs, and quiets the mind. Historians still argue whether the Romans understood the science behind it or just enjoyed the feeling. Maybe both, because as you sit there, the evidence is all around you. The glistening walls, the rhythmic breath of vapor, the steady calm overtaking the body. A physician enters, older, bearded, wearing the loose tunic of a man who spent his life studying people. He carries a bronze ladle, dips it into a basin of water, and pours it over the floor tiles. Instantly, a wave of steam rises, thicker and hotter, swallowing the air. He turns to you and smiles faintly. "For the humors," he says. Of course, always the humors? He believes, as most Roman doctors do, that steam draws out excess moisture or phlegm, restores warmth to the blood, rebalances the invisible elements of the body. You nod, even though part of you wants to explain that steam also opens airways, improves circulation, and helps oxygen absorption. But then again, what's the difference between science and intuition if both bring healing? The physician gestures toward a small copper bowl. Inside is a blend of crushed herbs, mint, thyme, and something sharper like camphor. He sprinkles it into the brazier, and the air changes again. It's suddenly medicinal, clean, like the world's first spa diffuser. You lean back, half dazed, half enlightened. In the corner, a young man coughs weakly. His companion pats his back, murmuring that the baths will pull the sickness out. You wonder if it's true. Maybe not literally, but the heat certainly helps him breathe easier. Modern studies would later prove it. Steam loosens mucus, eases congestion, and relaxes bronchial muscles. Rome stumbled into therapy through comfort. It's funny how often healing hides inside pleasure. A drop of water rolls down the ceiling and lands on your knee, sizzling faintly. You watch it evaporate, mesmerized. The walls themselves seem alive, exhaling mist through tiny pores in the plaster. The Romans knew how to seal heat with precision. Layers of brick, waterproof mortar, marble veneer, a kind of ancient insulation, equal parts beauty and function. Your mind drifts, lulled by the steady hiss of vapor. You think about the engineers who built this, their hands blackened by soot, their eyes red from smoke. Down below, the furnaces still roar, tended by men whose names history forgot. You can almost hear the faint echoes of shovels striking coal, fire roaring through tunnels. They are the unseen heartbeat of every calm moment above. And yet, somehow, this collaboration of fire and water feels divine. Maybe that's why the Romans saw baths as more than architecture. The word therme itself comes from the Greek thermos, heat, but it also implies sacred warmth, temples of the body. You start to understand why emperors built them not just for hygiene, but for glory. Every Roman who walked into these chambers stepped into the empire's idea of perfection, balance, comfort, control. You shift slightly, feeling sweat bead and roll down your arms. It's almost hypnotic, the slow rhythm of droplets tracing their way down skin. Across the room, someone hums softly. The sound blends with the hiss of steam, creating a low, continuous vibration that fills the chamber. You close your eyes, and the boundary between yourself and the air starts to blur. You're not just in the bath anymore. You're part of it. Outside, life continues. Markets buzz. Soldiers march. Merchants shout. But in here, time thickens. You exist only in warmth, moisture, and slow breathing. You wonder how many Romans experienced their first moment of true introspection in a place like this, stripped of armor, titles, and pretense. You catch fragments of conversation nearby. Two men argue about whether the gods themselves use baths. One insists that Neptune, being lord of water, must surely have a private pool somewhere in the sea. The other laughs, claiming Venus only bathes in rose oil. You smile quietly to yourself. Humor always finds its way into steam. Then comes the sudden clang of bronze as an attendant opens a side door, releasing a cloud of vapor into the cooler corridor. The air rushes outward with a sigh, like the chamber exhaling its secrets. You follow it, stepping through into a laconium, a dry, warm room designed for gradual cooling. Your body tingles, pores still open, skin radiant from the heat. Someone hands you a small cloth soaked in wine and vinegar, a disinfectant, though they wouldn't call it that. You wipe your face, inhale the sharp tang, and feel instantly refreshed. Another tiny scientific accident. Acids in the vinegar, bacteria. You wonder if any Roman realized that. As your senses return, you hear the faint splash of water from another chamber. Curious, you wander toward it and find a small pool surrounded by marble columns. The water glows faintly in lamplight. A woman kneels at its edge, whispering a prayer to Hygeia, goddess of health. She dips her hand, touches her forehead, and smiles. For a moment, the science dissolves into superstition again. But maybe that's not a contradiction. Maybe that's the beauty of it. That Rome's greatest experiment in comfort is equal parts faith and physics. You sit by the pool and watch steam rise in lazy spirals. It curls upward, brushes the ceiling, and then vanishes into the stone. You realize how delicate the balance is. Too little heat, and the room cools. Too much heat, and marble cracks. The Romans maintained that balance by instinct, adjusting furnaces by sound, by feel. A kind of symbiotic dance between man and fire. You dip your hand into the water. It's hot, but not scalding, silky with minerals. Somewhere in your memory, you recall that certain Roman baths drew water from springs rich with sulfur and calcium. The locals swore it cured arthritis, skin conditions, even melancholy. The logic is surprisingly modern. Mineral absorption through the skin, hydrostatic pressure on the joints. Accidental therapy again. As you lean back, the rhythm of dripping, breathing, and distant murmuring merges into one continuous hum. It's not loud, just steady, like a soft mechanical heart. You imagine this is what peace must have sounded like 2,000 years ago. Not silence, but harmony. And as the steam fades around you, a thought settles in your mind. Perhaps all the science of Rome, its aqueducts, hypocausts, perfumes, and oils, wasn't born from the desire to conquer nature, but to soothe it, to make existence bearable, breathable, even beautiful. You exhale slowly, feeling your lungs expand. The air, heavy with warmth, trembles slightly in your throat. You think of all the people who once sat right where you are, senators, slaves, healers, lovers, all exhaling into the same ancient mist. The baths were always democratic in one way. Everyone leaves equal. You stand, water trailing down your arms, and walk toward the next corridor. Behind you, the sudatorium breathes out another wave of steam, as if to remind you that
You step out of the steam chamber and into a corridor where cool air slips through narrow arches. The sound of dripping fades, replaced by the soft shuffle of sandals and the distant splash of fountains. Your skin prickles as it adjusts, the body reminding you that every luxury has its counterpoint. A gentle voice calls your attention. It belongs to a bath attendant, barefoot, wrapped in a simple linen cloth, holding a jar of oil. "The Strigial room," he says, motioning with a slight bow. You follow him into another chamber where the air smells faintly of olive and smoke. Here, the ritual of cleanliness becomes performance. The Strigial, a curved bronze scraper, hangs gleaming in the lamplight, its edge dulled by years of use. You remember reading somewhere that soap was not a Roman invention. Instead, they used oil, rubbed over the skin to lift dirt, then scraped away with the Strigial. It's both brutal and soothing. The attendant gestures for you to sit on a low marble bench. He dips his hand into the jar, scooping a measure of warm oil, and begins to rub it onto your shoulder in slow, circular motions. It's thicker than you expect, almost syrupy, and scented faintly with rosemary and myrtle. The warmth seeps in, loosening muscles you didn't realize were tense. Then comes the scrape. The bronze blade glides across your skin, dragging away oil, sweat, and the fine dust of the day. The sensation is strange, half discomfort, half release. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. Oil, scrape, wipe. Oil, scrape, wipe. The sound of it blends with the murmuring around you, the faint clatter of tools, the whisper of cloth against stone. Romans loved this moment, not just for the cleanliness, but for the transformation. The body, coated in oil, glowed in the lamplight. The scraping left it polished, smooth, alive. It was both hygienic and theatrical. And perhaps most importantly, it was communal. You glance around. Men of all ranks sit side by side, attendants moving between them like priests performing a sacred rite. Conversation hums softly. A senator complains about taxes. A retired soldier jokes about his scars. A young scholar recites half a line of Horace before forgetting the rest. The room feels almost monastic, yet full of life. You notice, too, that the attendants work with precision. The Strigial is always drawn in one direction to avoid irritation. The oil is applied along the muscles, not across them. You realize you're witnessing an early form of physical therapy. Modern massage borrows much of this instinct: motion following anatomy, heat to loosen, pressure to heal. When your turn ends, the attendant hands you a cloth and gestures toward a bronze basin. You wash your hands, and he smiles faintly, saying, "Purior quam mantea," cleaner than before. It feels like a benediction. As you stand, you see a narrow passage leading toward another section of the complex. You follow it, your bare feet slapping softly against mosaic floors. The tiles here depict dolphins and sea nymphs, their expressions eternally serene. You wonder how many centuries of footsteps have worn the colors smooth. The corridor opens into a vast atrium, the frigidarium. At its center lies a pool of cold, clear water. The ceiling arches high above, painted with constellations. Sunlight filters through narrow glass panes, scattering across the rippling surface. The shock of brightness makes you blink. After the dim warmth of the baths, it feels like stepping into another world. A few bathers float lazily, their movements slow and deliberate. Others stand by the edge, hesitating before plunging in. You understand why. The temperature difference is startling, almost punishing after the heat. But that's the point. You kneel, scoop a handful of water and splash it on your face. The cold bites sharply, so sharply it feels purifying. Goosebumps race up your arms. You inhale sharply and laugh under your breath. This, too, is therapy. Roman physicians might not have known about vasoconstriction or endorphins, but they understood contrast. Heat to open, cold to close. The alternation between the caldarium and frigidarium stimulated circulation, hardened the skin, steadied the mind. Even emperors followed the ritual. Steam, scrape, chill, rest. You slide into the water, gasping as the cold embraces you. It's almost electric, the body's shock giving way to calm. Around you, voices echo off the marble. Quiet conversation, splashes, laughter. A few swimmers float on their backs, staring up at the painted stars. For a fleeting moment, it feels like you're suspended between sky and earth, between body and spirit. You let yourself drift. The water feels endless, its chill sharpening every thought. You imagine the aqueducts feeding it, massive channels of stone bringing fresh water from miles away. The same infrastructure that sustained 1 million people also nourished their leisure. It's easy to forget that the baths were an extension of empire, a declaration that comfort could be engineered. And yet, there's humility here. The baths serve everyone. They blur class and rank. In this water, all bodies look the same, smooth, glistening, human. You think of the philosopher Seneca, who once complained about the noise of bathhouses, the shouts of masseurs, the grunts of athletes, the splash of water against skin. But perhaps that noise was the sound of democracy. As you float, your pulse slows, sinking with the rhythmic drip of water from the ceiling. The cold seeps into your bones, washing away the last remnants of heat and tension. When you finally climb out, you feel paradoxically warm inside, refreshed, almost reborn. An attendant hands you a linen towel. You wrap it around yourself and move toward the next chamber, where a faint scent of wine and honey drifts through the air. The districtory gives way to the unctory, the oiling room. Here, attendants massage the skin with perfumed unguents, myrrh for the wealthy, simple olive for the rest. You watch as they work, their movements practiced and patient. A merchant sighs as an attendant presses along his spine, muttering something about business taxes and gall. You realize something subtle. These rituals, heat, cold, scraping, oiling, aren't separate acts. They're a system, a carefully balanced sequence of temperature, pressure, and touch that stimulates the body in waves. Rome didn't just build baths, they built wellness architecture. You close your eyes and imagine what it must have been like on a festival day. Hundreds of citizens cycling through the chambers, voices echoing, oil jars clinking, water spilling over marble edges. The air would shimmer with humidity, laughter, and the faint music of flutes played by attendants to amuse the crowd. And beneath it all, the quiet genius of the hypocaust.
the invisible pulse of the furnaces keeping everything alive. You realize the baths are not only a reflection of Roman science, but of Roman psychology. In a world obsessed with conquest and status, they created one place where surrender was acceptable. Surrender to warmth, to stillness, to the hum of water. You think again of the idea that runs through it all: maintenance over medicine, prevent rather than cure. The baths were the empire's great equalizer, keeping soldiers fit, merchants calm, and philosophers contemplative. As you leave the uncturium, you notice a small alcove to the side, its walls covered in frescoes of satyrs and nymphs bathing under waterfalls. There's a stone bench there, half in shadow. You sit. The hum of conversation fades, replaced by the faint buzz of your own thoughts. You find yourself wondering whether any of those ancient bathers ever realized how close they were to modern understanding. They didn't know the words circulatory system or homeostasis or psychological release, but they built their lives around the feeling of equilibrium. And maybe that's all medicine ever was: the pursuit of balance, disguised as ritual. A breeze drifts through the corridor. The faint scent of olive and smoke lingers on your skin. You realize you're glowing, literally shining in the lamplight, as if the oil has sealed the warmth inside you. In the corner of the fresco, a painted nymph looks back at you. Her expression is calm, serene, knowing. You imagine she's seen thousands of bathers come and go, each seeking the same thing you did: peace. You smile faintly, and the room seems to exhale with you.
You linger in the fading warmth of the bathhouse, still damp from steam and ritual, when the echo of marching feet seems to carry through the stone. It's faint, rhythmic, so steady it feels like your heartbeat syncing with something ancient and organized. You realize you're hearing memory more than sound, the ghostly cadence of Roman legions moving ever outward. Because the baths never stayed put, they marched too. Every time Rome claimed new soil, the engineers followed the banners, laying aqueducts, carving furnaces, and raising stone domes over steaming pools. The empire wasn't just spreading law and language, it was exporting comfort. You step through a back corridor that opens, impossibly, onto a windswept hillside. The city has dissolved. The air smells of pine and distant smoke. Before you stretches a Roman military outpost, half fortress, half spa. At first glance, it's absurd. Soldiers in segmented armor lining up not for battle but for bathing. Steam curls from a stone hut built beside the barracks, rising into the pale sky. You can almost hear the centurion's orders: hot bath before cold night. The baths of the frontier are small, stripped-down versions of the city's marble palaces, but they pulse with the same philosophy. Even at the edges of the empire, cleanliness and heat are non-negotiable. You step through a back corridor that opens, impossibly, onto a windswept hillside. The city has dissolved. The air smells of pine and distant smoke. Before you stretches a Roman military outpost, half fortress, half spa. At first glance, it's absurd. Soldiers in segmented armor lining up not for battle but for bathing. Steam curls from a stone hut built beside the barracks, rising into the pale sky. You can almost hear the centurion's orders: hot bath before cold night. The baths of the frontier are small, stripped-down versions of the city's marble palaces, but they pulse with the same philosophy. Even at the edges of the empire, cleanliness and heat are non-negotiable. You duck inside. The caldarium here is humble. No mosaic dolphins, no gilded trim, just bare brick walls, a low arched ceiling, and a simple bronze brazier glowing red in the corner. But the logic is unchanged. The same hypocaust hums beneath your feet, heating the tiles until warmth radiates upward. The same pipes murmur as they carry water. The same benches line the wall where weary men sigh into silence. A soldier near you mutters something about frostbite and gods of comfort. Another jokes that they'll conquer Britannia one bathtub at a time. You can't help but smile. You suspect they might be right. Because this warmth is empire in its gentlest form. When a legion settled a new province, they brought architects before soldiers, masons before magistrates. They built roads, aqueducts, and baths, and then, almost incidentally, they built loyalty. The conquered might resent the taxes, but they rarely refused the luxury of hot water. The steam was persuasive. Imagine being a Celt in the chill of northern Britain, your village smoky, damp, and cold most of the year. Then the Romans arrive, and within a decade there's a domed building at the edge of town where warmth pours from the floor and light glows off wet marble. You step inside, and suddenly the empire doesn't seem so distant. Historians still argue whether the baths were a political tool or an accidental olive branch. Maybe both. Comfort makes excellent propaganda. You wander to another corner of the fort bathhouse, where a group of engineers huddled around a diagram scratched into the plaster. They're arguing about gradient, the perfect slope for drainage. One insists that even a degree too steep will cause the floor tiles to crack. The other swears by trial and error. You realize you're watching the scientific method in sandals. Their measurements, of course, aren't in meters, but in Roman feet. Their tools are simple, plumb lines, chalk, and instinct. But their precision is astonishing. Water flows exactly where they intend it. Fire heats only what it should. Rome built like a civilization afraid of imperfection. And yet, out here, things are imperfect by nature. Wind leaks through gaps, the stones frost over at night, sometimes the fires go out. Still, every morning, the soldiers relight them, tending the hypocaust as dutifully as their weapons. You sit by the brazier, watching one soldier feed it with kindling. His face glows orange, eyes half closed from fatigue. When he notices you, he chuckles. Better to sweat now than freeze later. He's right. Heat is hope in physical form. Later that day, you follow the road south, a Roman road, straight as an oath, cutting through hills and forests. At every milestone, you spot the same signs of civilization: baths, forums, temples. Some small, some crumbling, all alive with the same quiet hum of daily maintenance. By the time you reach Gaul, the baths have grown ornate again. The air smells of lavender and heated stone. You realize each region adds its own flavor. In Germania, pine oil. In Egypt, lotus. In Africa, frankincense. The empire's diversity seeps into its steam. You step inside a Gallic bathhouse built near a vineyard. The caldarium walls are plastered in local red clay, giving the room a rosy glow. Steam curls like silk ribbons under the arches. You sink into the pool and listen to the mix of Latin and Celtic chatter. One man brags about his grapes surviving the frost. Another complains about Roman taxes, then asks for the recipe of imported oil. You can't help but think that empire, in the end, is just a network of shared complaints delivered in many languages. As evening falls, you wander to the apoditerium. A musician strums a lyre softly in the corner. Attendants refill lamps. The flickering light glances off bronze mirrors and the edges of folded linen. The bathhouse hums like a living organism, its breath steady and patient. You remember how the Romans measured their wealth in water. A city with full baths was a city alive. A city whose fountains dried up was a city dying. Here, in the frontier, these baths are heartbeat and hearth combined. Outside, the air has cooled again. You step out into the twilight, watching mist rise from the building's roof vents like a spectral banner. Beyond the walls, dark woods stretch towards unknown lands.
Somewhere, barbarians still resist. Yet here, in this fragile glow, Rome feels eternal. And maybe that's the trick. The empire's strength wasn't just in legions, it was in warmth. Centuries later, archaeologists will dig up these ruins and marvel at the engineering. They'll write papers on the hypocaust's efficiency, the precision of Roman plumbing, the mathematical symmetry of domes, but they'll never quite capture what you feel standing here now, that the baths were less about heat and more about belonging. Even on the edge of the world, a Roman could step into the steam and feel at home. As night falls, you turn toward the sound of the river. Its surface reflects the faint orange light of the bathhouse windows, rippling like molten gold. Somewhere behind you, someone laughs, a deep, weary laugh that belongs to a man who survived another campaign. You find a flat stone by the water and sit, wrapping your arms around your knees. The air smells faintly of smoke and wet earth. The sound of the river blends with the rhythmic hiss of the furnaces behind you. You can almost feel the warmth still radiating through the ground, the hypocaust stretching like veins beneath the surface, connecting barracks and baths, Rome and provinces, people and peace. It's the quiet kind of conquest, not through fire, but through steam.
By the time you wander back toward the city, the air feels heavier, thicker with age, as though centuries have exhaled all at once. The stones under your sandals are slick with condensation. The streets glisten in moonlight. Rome sleeps, but the baths never truly do. Their walls breathe heat into the night, exhaling the empire's endless pulse. You enter again through the side gate of the baths of Caracalla. By now, you know the pattern. The faint echo of dripping water, the muffled murmur of distant voices, the occasional clatter of a bronze strigil dropped onto marble. But tonight, something feels different. The air is restless. A few attendants are still awake, working by lamplight. They're scrubbing tiles, emptying jars, whispering about rumors, earth tremors, a senator's arrest, a grain shortage. Life in the capital doesn't pause for bathing. But within these walls you can sense it, the empire shifting, cracking softly beneath its marble sheen. The water still runs, but not quite as cleanly. The oil still glistens, but the scent has dulled. Even the steam feels tired. You pass through the frigidarium, where the marble pools reflect the faint shimmer of lamplight. A man lies half asleep on a bench, towel draped over his chest, mumbling about taxes. You smile. Rome's most eternal element isn't stone or aqueducts, it's bureaucracy. You keep walking. In a shadowed corner, a young apprentice kneels beside a cracked tile, holding a wax tablet filled with calculations. He's trying to estimate repair costs for the hypocaust. Fuel prices have risen. Wood is scarce, and the city's appetite for luxury never stops growing. His master leans over him, muttering that maybe they should start burning olive pits instead of logs. You realize you're watching the empire's slow transformation into an accountant's nightmare. But here's the strange part. Despite shortages and politics, the baths remain the last public good that no emperor dares to neglect, because everyone comes here. Plebeians, senators, soldiers, slaves. This is the one space where the empire pretends equality exists. Steam makes everyone anonymous. You find a corner seat where warm air rises in faint drafts. The walls around you shimmer faintly in the lamplight, painted with scenes of nymphs and dolphins, though the colors have faded. A century of scrubbing has washed away the vibrancy. Still, the geometry holds. Rome knew how to build permanence, even into fragility. You lean back and listen.
The baths hum like a heart slowing with age. There's comfort in that rhythm, steady, deliberate, mortal. Then you notice something new in the air, a faint metallic tang. Iron? Rust? You follow the scent toward the furnace room. The profernium glows dimly. A single old man tends the fires now, his hands blackened, his tunic soaked with sweat. He looks up as you approach, smiles without surprise, and says in Latin, "The world runs on heat." He tosses a log into the flames. Sparks leap, catching in the air like tiny constellations. He tells you he's been working here for 40 years, since the reign of Septimius Severus. He's seen emperors come and go, statues replaced, prices rise, and aqueducts dry. But the fire? The fire has never gone out. You stand beside him, watching the light dance on the bricks. He talks about the rhythm of fuel, how too much chokes the flame, too little suffocates it. He says the trick is to listen to the heat. You nod, realizing he's describing not just the furnace, but civilization itself. Historians still argue whether the Roman obsession with baths contributed to their decline. Some say the vast bath complexes drained resources, water, wood, manpower, that could have sustained other needs. Others argue they were the glue holding society together, the ritual that kept chaos at bay. Maybe both are true. Maybe the baths were both balm and burden. You leave the furnace chamber and walk through a long arched hallway lined with niches where statues once stood. Most are gone now, melted for coin, looted for villas, repurposed by time. Only their outlines remain, ghostly silhouettes on the walls. For the first time, you sense silence beneath the hum. The empire's heartbeat is fading. But even in decay, beauty lingers. The engineering still works, the pipes still sigh, the marble still holds warmth. The science that built this world doesn't crumble as easily as politics. You sit near a cracked mosaic, Neptune riding dolphins, one tile missing from his trident. The missing piece bothers you, and yet you can't help smiling at it. Imperfection, finally, proof that even Rome had limits. A pair of students enter, scrolls under their arms, whispering about medical experiments. They're testing heat's effect on breathing, using the baths as a natural laboratory. One argues that inhaling steam infused with salt water improves the lungs. The other insists it damages them. Their argument grows animated, their voices echoing against stone. You realize you're listening to the birth of controlled observation, the quiet prelude to modern medicine. The Romans weren't guessing anymore. They were measuring. Steam curls around their faces, turning their argument into a misty tableau. One laughs and says, "We may drown before we agree." You chuckle softly, thinking how scientific discovery often comes disguised as stubbornness. Back in the main hall, the crowd thins. The lamps burn low. The bathhouse settles into its nightly rhythm of stillness. A poet recites a verse to himself by the pool, lines about warmth and impermanence. His voice fades into the hiss of escaping steam. You walk past him toward the exit. The night air bites at your skin. You shiver, realizing how quickly comfort vanishes once you leave its source. From the top of the stairs, you look back at the bathhouse. The domes gleam faintly under moonlight, and smoke rises from the chimneys like memory. You can almost see the centuries stacked inside those walls. Soldiers, merchants, slaves, emperors, all breathing the same vapor, all chasing the same warmth. And suddenly you understand. The baths were never really about water or science or empire. They were about continuity, the quiet promise that for a few moments everyone could step inside and feel human again. You turn away. Somewhere beyond the Tiber, a rooster crows. Dawn approaches. Rome, eternal and exhausted, stirs to life once more. You pull your cloak tighter and walk into the city's pale morning light, carrying the ghost of steam on your skin. The warmth lingers longer than it should.
The next time you return, centuries have passed. Or at least that's what it feels like. The streets are quieter now, the marble cracked, the fountains dry. The empire that once pulsed with steam and certainty has cooled, like the embers of a furnace untended for too long. You stand before the ruins of a bathhouse, the once grand baths of Diocletian, their arches broken open to the sky. The wind sighs through them like breath escaping an old body. Grass grows between tiles that once gleamed with candlelight. And yet, when you close your eyes, you can still hear it. The faint hiss of vapor, the laughter, the low hum of voices, the steady beat of sandals across stone. Memory condenses like moisture in the air. You step over a fallen column and into what used to be the caldarion. The floor, still blackened by time, feels cool underfoot. The hypocaust below is silent now, its brick pillars exposed like ribs of a long-dead creature. You crouch, run your hand across the dust, and imagine the heat that once lived here, radiant, relentless, alive. In a way, it's astonishing how much survived. The arches still stand, their geometry too perfect to fully surrender. The drains still slope at just the right angle. Even the ventilation shafts remain, angled to pull smoke one way and fresh air the other. The science that powered Rome's comfort didn't die with it. It just went dormant, waiting to be rediscovered. You wander deeper into the ruins, and something flickers across your mind, a whisper of continuity. Because while Rome has fallen, the idea of bathing hasn't. The empire of warmth found new homes in Byzantine hammams, in Ottoman baths, in medieval monasteries where monks heated stone tubs with candles. The ritual migrated, disguised, survived. You step into what was once the tepidarium. The walls curve upward like a shell, still catching the morning sun. The acoustics are eerie, your footsteps echo twice. You imagine what it must have sounded like when this room was alive. The drip of condensation, the rhythm of brushes scrubbing backs, the gossip of senators pretending not to eavesdrop. Now it's only birds nesting in the cornices, their soft cooing filling the silence. You think of the people who once stood where you are. Emperors wrapped in towels embroidered with gold thread, slaves scraping oil from their arms, merchants cutting deals in whispers, philosophers composing thoughts in the fog. All gone. Only the air remembers. Historians still argue whether the collapse of Rome was inevitable, whether it fell from decadence, disease, invasion, or simple exhaustion. But standing here, you suspect the answer might be quieter. Maybe Rome didn't fall. Maybe it exhaled. You find a surviving mosaic near the corner, a faint image of Apollo, god of healing, his face half missing. Someone centuries later used this space as a chapel. Crosses were carved into old marble, saints painted over pagan gods. The water was replaced by incense, but the purpose stayed the same: purification, in body or in soul. It's strange, isn't it, how people keep returning to steam, to scent, to warmth. Whether in a Roman bath or a church, in a hammam or a spa, humanity keeps rediscovering the same truth, that healing doesn't always come from medicine. Sometimes it comes from temperature, from texture, from time itself.
You move toward a cracked pool, now filled with rainwater. It's shallow, green with algae, but the surface glimmers like a memory of cleanliness. You dip your fingers into it, cool, soft, almost sacred. For a fleeting moment, you can imagine you can feel the old temperature rising again. The walls flicker with lamplight, voices echo faintly, and the room breathes. The baths are alive again, if only in your imagination. You smile, because that's how history survives, not through monuments, but through reenactment. Every time someone steps into a shower, lights a candle beside a tub, or exhales fog onto a mirror, they're repeating Rome's quiet science without even knowing it. There's something poetic about that. You walk back into the open air. Around you, the ruins blend into the living city. Modern Rome hums just beyond the arches, cars, conversations, espresso machines steaming like miniature hypocausts. You can't help laughing softly. Somewhere, Galen would be proud. A tour guide leads a group of students past the gate. You overhear her explaining the principles of Roman engineering. They used gravity to move water, radiant heat for comfort, and architecture to inspire awe. Her voice echoes against the stone, her words dissolving into the same air that once carried the chatter of bathers. You follow the group for a moment, just to hear her cadence. When she mentions that the baths could hold up to 3,000 people at once, a student gasps. You grin. Romans didn't just build infrastructure, they built spectacles of serenity. Later, as the tourists leave, you sit on a fragment of column. The evening light spills over the ruins, painting everything gold. A faint breeze moves through the arches, and for a moment it feels like the place is breathing again. You think of all the things the Romans never meant to invent: relaxation therapy, aromatherapy, architecture that regulates temperature with geometry, community wellness centers long before the term existed. They didn't call it self-care, they called it Tuesday. And maybe that's what makes it beautiful, the lack of irony. The world today chases health with apps, supplements, and scented candles. But here, centuries ago, people simply showed up, stripped down, and trusted water, heat, and time to do the rest. You tilt your head back, watching the sky through a broken dome. The clouds drift lazily above the marble edges. It's easy to imagine them as steam escaping from the Earth's oldest bath. Somewhere deep below, the old hypocaust tunnels still exist, silent, dark, dust-filled. Archaeologists crawl through them now, tracing how air once flowed. They call it research, but it's really communion, a conversation between living curiosity and ancient ingenuity. The stones hum faintly under your feet, warmed by the last rays of sunlight. You imagine the fires relit, the pipes singing again, the baths filling with chatter. The ghosts of engineers nod approvingly. Maybe Rome never truly died. Maybe it just turned into a language of comfort we all still speak. You exhale slowly, watching your breath mist in the cooling air. For a heartbeat, it looks like steam.
Night falls over the ruins, and the city exhales. Rome at dusk is a quieter creature. The tourists thinning, the cats reclaiming the alleys, the stones glowing faintly from the day's warmth. You linger among the arches, tracing the edge of a half-buried column, and feel the pulse of time running through it like a faint heartbeat. The baths are almost invisible now, blending into the rhythm of the city around them. A scooter hums past, its headlights briefly illuminating what was once an emperor's favorite entrance. The smell of espresso mingles with that of damp earth. Somewhere, a radio murmurs an Italian pop song. And beneath it all, silence, the kind that waits, patient and deep.
You stand at the edge of what used to be the natatio, the great open-air pool. The marble is chipped, the mosaics faded, but if you tilt your head just right, you can almost see the shimmer of water in the moonlight. You imagine it full again, a mirror of stars, the surface trembling as bathers wade through reflections of the constellations. In the far distance, you hear the faint hiss of a modern steam vent, a subway exhaust, perhaps, and for a heartbeat, your brain confuses centuries. The sound is so familiar, so ancient, you almost expect to see a servant tending the hypocaust below. You smile. Some inventions never really leave us. They just hide under new names. You sit, finally, on a fragment of carved cornice and rest your palms on the stone. It's cool now, but not cold. It has absorbed the day's sunlight like memory. You let your fingers wander over the worn designs, spirals, leaves, a fragment of what might have been a dolphin. The Romans adored dolphins. They believed the creatures guided souls to safe harbors. Fitting, you think, for a place that once promised comfort to the living. Historians still argue whether the baths were ever truly egalitarian, whether slaves and senators could truly share the same water, or if that was just poetic propaganda. But the evidence remains stubbornly democratic. Bath tokens unearthed with identical markings, seating arrangements mixed, oil jars of equal size. Perhaps for a few steaming hours, people really did forget rank. You look up at the vaults, fractured yet magnificent. Even broken, they curve with impossible grace. The Romans didn't just build for the present, they built for echoes. And as the wind moves through the ruins, the air trembles softly, like the afterthought of a chorus. It's here, surrounded by this quiet geometry, that the story of the baths feels less like a chapter in history and more like a recurring dream humanity keeps having. Every civilization invents water, heat, and stillness in its own way. Every age rediscovers how much calm hides inside temperature. You close your eyes and picture it. Constantinople's hammams, built from the ashes of Roman engineers. The medieval bathhouses of England, where monks prescribed steam as penance. The hammams of Fez, tiled in blue and gold, humming with whispered prayers. The Scandinavian saunas, hot stones hissing with snowmelt. Each one of them a descendant of Rome's quiet science. And then, of course, the modern spa, with its scented oils, white robes, and piped-in pan flute music pretending to be ancient. A little silly, maybe, but the instinct is the same. Heat, water, rest, repeat. A ritual so universal, it transcends empire. You imagine the old engineers watching from some ghostly balcony, bemused at humanity's stubbornness. Still doing it, they'd ask? Still chasing warmth? And you'd nod, because some cravings never die. Not hunger, not comfort, not the need to be cleansed of the world for just a while. The moon climbs higher, spilling silver across the ruins. You stand and walk toward the exit, your footsteps soft on the old tiles. The air grows cooler as you go, the scent of evening jasmine drifting from a nearby courtyard. Somewhere in the city, a bathhouse still steams, a modern one, tiled in white, humming with quiet conversation. You can almost see it, the bathers leaning back, eyes closed, their breath mingling with the mist. They don't know they're repeating a ritual 2,000 years old, but they are. Every sigh, every droplet, every minute spent in warmth is a line of poetry written by the ancient engineers of comfort. And it's beautiful.
because even as empires crumble, water remembers. The trickle of fountains becomes the heartbeat of civilization. The hiss of steam becomes the sound of continuity. You reach the street again. The hum of modern life surrounds you. Cars, laughter, the faint clatter of dishes from a trattoria. It feels almost sacrilegious, and yet perfect. Because that's what the Romans understood, that science and serenity, engineering and emotion can coexist in the same breath. You take one last look back at the ruins. The arches frame the sky, and for a second it looks like steam rising again, soft, luminous, eternal.